All right. However this one ends, this is how it ends. I'm not giving myself a choice. I'm not restarting over and over again for the umpteenth time. I'm just going to freeball this episode. Freeball? Yeah, why not? We'll go with it.
You're listening to Death Takes a Holiday, a Middle Falls podcast on KMFR Radio with your host, Matthias Dexter Frost.
Hi, guys. My name is Matthias Dexter Frost. Welcome to Death Takes a Holiday, a Middle Falls podcast, where we discuss the Middle Falls time travel series by the great author Sean Inman. You can check out all of his books at sean-inman.com. Please go check it out. Please go pick up The Unusual Second Life of Thomas Weaver. That is the first entry in the Middle Falls time travel series. It's a great book. As of now, February 16th, 2026, it is available to listen to free on Audible. I don't think you need a membership to do so. Please go check it out. It's definitely worth a listen. It's only 10 hours of your time, and you will have a fantastic journey through your introduction to Middle Falls. It's really good. My guest today is not here. He's under the weather and is in no condition to put his voice to any kind of audio recorder. So we're going to come back and with him in a few weeks and see how he's doing. We will be discussing The Final Life of Nathaniel Moon. That is book 4 in the Middle Falls time travel series. That was a little bit different than most of the other ones. It has different themes. It's totally badass in a way that I can't even explain. So again, check that one out if you want to listen to that one before we talk about The Final Life of Nathaniel Moon. That should be coming up. I don't know if it's going to be next pod, but it might be the pod after that. Get yourself familiar with that if you want to join in the discussion there. This is the one thing that everybody has said to their parents at one point or another. I didn't ask to be born. That is pretty much the rage behind every nu metal song of the 90s, that whole angst about being alive in the first place and not ever having asked for it. Nobody consents to being alive. It's just something you are until you're not. So what happens in the Middle Falls universe? Let's take Thomas Weaver. In 2016, he's lived 40 years of his life with the burdensome guilt and regret of causing the death of his brother Zach. And as a result of that and many other successive failures in life, losing his job, never realizing his potential, being an alcoholic, being a disappointment to everybody around him, so he thinks, letting down his mom, just living an utterly broken life. From that moment forward, when he had that accident in 1976, he says, you know what, I'm done. And he decides to take a bunch of sleeping pills, wash him down with alcohol, and that's it. He's dead. He's gone. Or so you think. Then he wakes up, it's 1976, and what's he doing? He's asleep in his bed with his brother still alive in the house. He wakes up and he's 15 years old again. What a trip that is. What an incredible, overwhelming sense of what the hell. I don't think any of us can fathom what that would be like, to wake up in our younger body at an earlier point in our life, knowing everything that stretches off for the next few decades. But all that's gone now, and now you're back here. What the hell are you going to do? It's overwhelming, and I think Sean does a good job at covering Thomas's reaction to that, and that uncertainty of knowing, is this temporary? Is this permanent? What do I do from here? My brother's still alive. Can I save his life? Can I prevent him from dying in that car crash coming up in a few months? And then later on, of course, in school, he recognizes Michael Hollister, who he knows to go on to become a vicious serial killer who kills 30 people. What do you do? How much can you change? Do you feel that you're responsible for that change? And above everything else, the one question that I'm asking today for Thomas, for every protagonist of the Middle Falls time travel series, nobody asked me, what the hell? Nobody offered me a choice. Nobody told me, well, you can go back to start your life over at this point, or you can just be dead, whatever that means, whatever, moving on to the next stage of whatever is, or you can just go to your eternal rest. Nobody gave Thomas Weaver a choice in the matter. He just woke up. Now, whenever I ask somebody if they like to be reborn at a certain point and live their lives over from that point, knowing what they currently know, most people say, well, yeah, I guess. Maybe a few people would say no. But we assume that we would be given that option. Thomas wasn't given that option. Charles Waters wasn't given that option, and he had to deal with having cancer over and 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 over again. He got 4 to 5 weeks to live, and he lived over 1,000 lives in that loop. Some would say that's cruel. Maybe Charles probably felt that way at some point. It's not really, outwardly explored from Charles's point of view in that book, but it is from the watcher's point of view when they eventually say, you know what, maybe if we just make it less painful for him, he can have the growth he needs. See, the watchers make mistakes all the time. They don't always make the best judgments either. So you get restarted. You didn't have a choice in that matter. What do you do now? What Thomas Weaver does, he tries to fix the circumstances around his brother dying. Michael Hollister, the serial killer, he gets his reckoning. The next book in the series is The Redemption of Michael Hollister. And that book is really hard to get through. I would warn people if they have sensitivity around things like child abuse. That's a really hard slog. Like a lot of Sean Inman's books are really hard at the beginning to get through, but it's necessary to set up the growth of the character later on. However, I would say that one's really tough. Just letting you know about that. But again, he's not asked. And I think of all the protagonists in the books, I think Michael Hollister is the one who, at the very most, doesn't want to come back. He doesn't want to wake up back when he was only 8 years old. He doesn't want to be reborn just to be re-victimized over and over and over again. That was at the peak of when he was being abused. And as a result of that, he takes his revenge on his parents over 150 times. I think it's like 180 times or something like that. I mean, spoiler alert, I guess you'll get through it at some point. Most of you have already listened to it, or read it, but I'll tell you, it's pretty gruesome. And the trauma that he has to go through over and over again. And it's not just the trauma of the initial abuse, right? No, it's not that, because I guarantee you when he is in that state of rage, when he's feeding the machine with his rage and he is killing his parents over and over again and then checking out all over again, he's wreaking unfathomable trauma upon himself. Now, when he's reborn, only he remembers that. His parents don't remember it. None of the people from the last life he just left, they're not there anymore. Whatever happens to that encapsulated dimension, we don't know. But Michael knows, and he lives with that every single day for the rest of all of his lives. He lives with that. He does get redeemed, proving that anybody, no matter how callous, no matter how messed up they are, no matter what they do, and honestly, there's not much worse you can do than just murdering people. Yeah, he gets a redemption arc. So what does that mean? That means everybody gets a redemption arc, maybe. But I will say the ethics of consent are big questions to have around that theme. The why has to come into effect. Like, why is the person being restarted? Well, they need to live a better life. Well, who defines what better is? Who decides that? Is it up to the protagonist? Or when they reach the end of that life, are they going to be restarted again because they didn't cut the mustard? There's a lot of judgment inherent, although Sean tries not to be judgy. It's never really said what entity decides if somebody's ready to move on to that next stage in their life. It's not talked about. It's just sort of implicit that at the end of the story, when everything seems right, then that person moves on to their next stage. But who defines that? I guess you could say the person decides that on some level because they feel like they've done the best they could. It's never a perfect life, but they feel like they've done the best they could. They haven't left a trail of dead bodies in their wake or something. They end up becoming their idealized version of that particular individual, and they are given the chance to move on or to start a new life on Earth or go to rock and roll heaven, whatever it is. But we're never told who makes the ultimate decision. We would assume it's the machine. There's a lot of assuming to be done. Is the machine a benevolent dictator, or is it cruel and monstrous, or is it neither? The whole point of human existence is to feed the machine. If that's the case, does the machine experience its own emotion? Does it know what emotion is? Now, I would say that at least at first, no, it doesn't. It doesn't know because it can't tell the difference between a positive emotion and a negative one. It doesn't know the difference between happiness and love and joy and misery, sorrow, loss, or anger or rage. It doesn't know the difference. It only knows this emotion is strong, this emotion is not so strong, this is unemotional. As a matter of fact, we're going to go back to Charles Waters. Charles Waters didn't really register a lot of emotion when the machine was trying to collect on him. He wasn't a very emotional person, or at least he didn't exhibit it outwardly. Read that book to find out the nuts and bolts of that. But I don't think the machine can tell the difference. I think the machine had to learn the difference, had to be taught that difference. And as a result, I think the machine it might be sentient, but it might not be sentient in a way that humanity can relate to. It just doesn't know what emotions mean. It just knows whether they're weak or strong. Does the machine decide what's better? No, I think that's the watchers who decide whether a person moves on or not. I don't think the machine can necessarily tell. It's just trying to get the strongest emotions out of the people. It's the watcher's job to decide if that person has maxed out their potential for emotional and spiritual growth, and then passes them on to the next stage. So is it kind of a benevolent coercion when somebody's restarted over and over again? Maybe. I don't necessarily know if that's ethical, but the machine is a more advanced life form than humanity is, so our consent might not matter as much. It'd be like the consent of an animal as compared to that of a human. We make decisions for other living things all the time, and not all of them are good. Hey there, Middle Falls denizens and travelers. This is Maddie from the future, or rather, that other guy in the Stranger Things shirt. That was Hindsight Maddie. I'd spent a long time in my car recording, and I just kind of lost my steam. I had done about 12 takes, and the pressure to nail it was mounting, so the main body of this was done in that one long take, which I edited slightly for clarity and brevity. The point of this episode is to explore the ideas behind consent in the Middle Falls universe. As mentioned, the protagonists don't have a choice until their lives come full circle, and the individual has reached the apex of their personal development and growth. These people are never truly alone in these repetitive journeys. Along the way, they meet people who will become part of their true family. Some of them have help through recurring characters like Moondog, or from a certain cute, adorable, scrappy little pooch named Mushu. Michael Hollister is greatly helped by his adopted brother Max, whom he spends the rest of his idealized life caring for and loving probably more than he ever loved anyone in any of his lives. Remember when I said earlier that Michael has to live with the trauma and the pain, not just from the life where he suffered abuse, but from the dozens of times he killed his parents and then himself, successively over and over again? Well, Max drew out the love in Michael that he was never able to feel in any of his previous lives, and that was Michael's true redemption, the love that became more powerful than his rage. But it all boils down to one question. Would Michael or anyone else in these stories have turned down the opportunity to restart if they'd been given that choice the very first time? Do the ends justify the means? Even if that person ends up better off in the long run, having worked through their pain and exorcised their demons, is it right to leave that person no choice but to see it through? I know. The story's got to happen, so we just assume that no. The main character wouldn't be much of a main character if they were able to choose. And that's pretty much all of us. There's only so much we can control in our lives. What lies outside of our control, from the interpersonal to the cosmic level, dwarfs what agency we have. And I guess the point is to do the best we can with what we're given. In that sense, what is given to Thomas Weaver and Michael Hollister and Charles Waters and all of the rest is just that which they have to work with and what they choose to do with it, or try to do with it, at the very least. It's the only measure of control they have, to seize on to those extra lives, to those restarts, and make the best of it. So, does consent here really matter? I'll leave that question open and you can let me know. If you're watching this on YouTube, drop a comment and let me know what you think. And please, like, subscribe, and click the bell to get notified whenever the podcast is updated. If you aren't on YouTube, you can reach me at the Middle Falls Discord server or the Middle Falls Time Travel Series official Facebook group, which are both linked below. I want to thank each and every one of you for sticking this out with me this week. And remember, it'll be all right in the end. It's not all right. It's not the end. Until next time, this is Matthias Dexter Frost. Take care.
Oregon, there is a town where the end is not necessarily the end.